Welcome to Feel Seen. We are a digital space designed for artists and creatives who yearn for more. At a time of massive change, what does it mean to create? What role does artistic expression serve for the individual and the collective? On this podcast, we try to answer these questions by interviewing artists on their holistic creative processes, their work, and their personal journey.
Hi, Sarah. How are you?
Hi, Roxanne. I'm great, thanks.
So today I'm really excited to have you as a guest on the Feel Seen podcast to talk about your career, your art practice, but also your involvement in this beautiful project.
Amazing.
So where are you in the world right now?
I am in my home in Paris. I've been living here for a couple of years when I come back from New York in 2018.
And did you move to Paris to pursue your art practice and your career? What was the motivation to move from New York to Paris?
So I actually grew up around Paris, so it's always been my home kind of. Even though I grew up on the countryside, so it was like the big city, but it was my big city. And then I moved to New York, partly for work, partly for love. And came back to Paris for the same reasons.
Amazing. And in terms of your career, I'm very curious to hear more about how you've started and how you feel your career developed at the same time as your art practice.
I guess I've always been an artistic child. I grew up in a family where the arts were really respected. Like, we would always listen to music and go to see movies and theater plays and ballets and all of that. And I was also really fortunate in that I got a really classical and academic art education from a young age, be it music theory, academic drawing, ballet, all very rigorous artistic practices. So it really opened my mind to these worlds. And also, when I was a kid, I would draw all the time. And at some point, I don't know, around 7, I came to my mom and I was like, it's funny these days, I really only draw girls and their clothes. What do they wear? And she was like, oh, it's a job. It's called being a stylist. And I was like, okay, that's what I'll do. And that's all I said until I was 18. And I was like, I still want to be a stylist. And therefore I went to fashion school and that's how it started. But really, I had no other plan.
It was really your parents, your family saying, I see your potential. I see there's also a way for you to make a living, to pursue being a stylist, maybe combine your passion as a child. Would you say it's your family that really encouraged you first?
Yes and no, because when my mom said that to me, I was like, okay, that's what I want to do. But at the same time, I would get another kind of input, which was more from my dad's side, but I guess from more the rational parenting style, being it's a weird industry. From what we've heard, you need to know people. We don't know anyone. So just make sure that that's really what you want to do, because they were really into your career being your passion. That was a big thing for them. But also, I think they were kind of scared. And that's why when the moments came to choose an education for fashion, we picked a very traditional fashion school that's really about the technical aspect of the garment creation and learning how to sew and how to drape and how to do pattern making and all that. That was already a problem because, so in French we have this one word, stylist, which means fashion designer and stylist. So I thought I wanted to be a fashion designer, but when I arrived at school, I realized that I didn't really care about how to build a sleeve or what button to pick, all the things that the other students would geek on about. I was like, I don't care about the button. I just want to create a character, I just want to tell a story through garments. Because, again, growing up in the countryside in an environment that was so traditional, well, all of the women that I would see were very... most of them wouldn't work and they would go to church and they had this very specific look about them, with the little headband and the pearls. And so that was the one type of women being portrayed. And so for me, as a teenager, as I bought Vogue and stuff, because obviously there was no social media back then, I would see all these different types of women being portrayed. And so for me, the language of fashion photography really spoke to me, and it showed me that another type of lifestyle was possible. I remember especially editorials from Karine Roifel at the time, And she would really use coats from the bourgeoisie, like the pearls and all of that, the twin set, but like twisted in a way that was super conceptual. And so to me, these fashion photographies, they really spoke to me, and they kind of gave me hope that I would be able to leave this very specific environment.
Amazing. And then, I mean, the fashion industry is pretty competitive. So I know you started as an assistant. And then obviously you became the amazing stylist, art director, company owner that you are now. Can you tell us a little bit about how you felt when you really started in the industry? How did that happen for you?
Actually, even before that, before they moved to New York and before becoming a stylist assistant, I still thought I wanted to do design. So I started assisting and interning in that type of environment. And I soon realized that I wasn't meant to be in an office. I wasn't meant to create things for like 6 months to create one collection. It wasn't aligned with how I wanted to work. And so it's on the very first fashion shoot that I attended that I was like, that's what I want to do. I don't care about making the clothes. I just want to tell a story through them once they're done, and like picking them and thinking about casting and lighting and all of that was really an insane discovery for me. So that's when I started to assist, because there really is no school to learn about these jobs. You just learn on the job. So at first you offer your time and energy for free to kind of like intern for stylists or photographers and all of that. And then you become a paid assistant, and then you become your own artist. So it's a long road, and it's hard. Like when I arrived to New York, well, at first I didn't even have a visa. But yeah, all you have to offer basically when you barely speak the language, it's just your time and energy. And so you learn on the job, and you'd better learn fast because, at first you're not paid, and obviously you need to get paid in a city like New York. So it was really hard at first, and it's a lot because obviously you get into this industry because you love beauty, you love fashion, glamour. And you end up starting at a job that is so unglamorous. It's mainly logistics and carrying heavy stuff and like waking up at 5, and it's really brutal. And honestly, meeting other people from other jobs throughout my career, including you being like a stylist assistant, is really the hardest working person on set every single time. Then I was like, okay, yeah, that does validate my experience. So yeah, it was hard at first.
Yeah, being a stylist and being a producer, both jobs are really hard, and sometimes you don't have the recognition. Being a stylist assistant especially, you're working with amazing people, but it's really not easy also to get recognized. I was wondering, because the goal of this project is also to highlight amazing mentor, and I feel really blessed to have you part of this project because we've been collaborating for more than 10 years. Yeah. And I think we have a similar path and journey. And I wanted to ask you, did you have back then when you started a mentor or someone that really showed you the way or helped you in any ways in New York or Paris?
Not really. Because ultimately a mentor is someone that, I guess, sees you, cares about what you do, but also recognizes the value of what you bring to the table. And even just that, the recognition is so rare when you're an assistant at first. It really feels like you're giving all this time and energy, but it could be any other person doing that, because the lower you are on the hierarchy, the less creative you are. So you get into these jobs because you have a creative vision, but at first you're really just doing logistics and carrying stuff and organizing, which none of that has ever been my thing. So no, I didn't have any mentor in that sense. Sometimes some people would like compliment my vision and sensibility, and I would be like, okay, I'm not here for nothing. But I wouldn't say that I learned some stuff from the people I was assisting, but it was mainly tricks and gimmicks. It was like, oh, this is how you style a sleeve, or oh, this is how you send a package to China. I mean, it's not, it wasn't exciting things to learn. But I feel like the exciting things to learn, I learned on my own by looking at what other people were doing in magazines, going to exhibitions. But yeah, I was definitely lacking that.
And I'm curious to hear more about if you had a community back then. How did you meet new people, find like-minded people in your industry? Because we all know we need to be very courageous to just leave everything behind, our friends or family, and start again in a new city like New York. So I'm curious to hear about your experience about building a community basically from scratch.
Well, that was a journey as well. When I moved there at 24 with my ex-boyfriend, we didn't know anyone. He was like working a lot, launching a company. I didn't have a visa. So it felt really lonely. But then after a while, we started to create a community of European people, which felt more like home, and the people that we ended up like sharing a house with. And so that felt like a family, that felt like a community, but none of these people shared my work and career. So they wouldn't really understand why, for example, I would have another schedule, or they would come home from the office and I would be just like doing a style out in my in my living room with like feathers on my head, and they'd be like, "What is your job?" So that was in a way a community. But then in terms of the people I worked with, I'd say that other than you, who we met because we collaborated on the shoot, and I mean, it really worked out because, well, not only did we become great friends, also collaborators on projects, but even in between projects, I remember us going to the coffee shop together and working on stuff. And that was really amazing to share that lifestyle with a person. But I don't know about you, but the other people in the industry, of course, a lot of them we were friendly with, but it always felt like these relationships were more transactional in a way, because you meet, say, a photographer, and even if it's a really nice person, you're always like, is he going to hire me on that? Is she going to help me on this thing? Same with agents, same with clients, with everyone. There's always an agenda. So it's really hard to find someone who shares your lifestyle and your struggles and your practice of being a creative person who wants to build a body of work without any agenda. Yeah. I'd say that was lacking already there. And that's why I'm so happy that that's what we're today trying to build together, because I do believe that it's a big issue for creative people.
Yeah, especially like finding the people that you feel safe with, that you can fully express your challenges, the doubts, but also the wins, because I feel it's such a competitive industry. We all need to support each other. And this is exactly why we're starting this project with Feel Seen. How do you feel this will affect the way you are going to mentor artists, and how you're going to evolve in this project?
The one thing that comes to mind straight away is that I feel like a big problem in fashion is a bit of a scarcity culture, where you can be up and you can be down so fast. You know what I mean? Like, you spend so much time building a career, and then because it's so fast paced in terms of trends for clothes, for photography, for models, for everything, it can be really fast for you to lose everything that you've gained. You know, it's not a career where you can be like, oh, it's going well for me now, I just know it's going to be like that for the next 40 years. It's just not that type of work line. And therefore, everyone is scared, and everyone is trying to grasp to what they have, and that's why they don't really want to help other people. And that's why when someone else is suddenly doing well, there can be a lot of envy, and that all is the base for what I think is a toxic industry in its whole. And so that's why, with all the work that we've been doing for the past years, to really try and change that mindset and be like, let's, as you say, let's celebrate the wins for your friends and other people. Let's assume that if you're true to your vision and if you keep on getting better at what you do, there'll always be room for you. There will always be clients and people who will be sensitive to that. And so to change that whole mindset for us is the base of a healthy life and a healthy relationship. And I really hope we can spread that to other people by allowing them to really dig deep into what they want to express and to have that be the new base for their work.
Absolutely. And I'm wondering, you're talking about toxic environment, and we all know people that have been through one of these experiences. And have you ever felt like you were stuck in a toxic environment?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
I'm not
many
surprised.
times.
And can you describe a little bit what was your process and how you dealt with that? Because it can create a lot of anxiety. And as you said, like in this industry, there's envy, there's competition. You look at what the other stylist and the other person next to you is doing, and we compare each other all the time. So can you tell us like how you manage your anxiety, and how did you find yourself moving out of these toxic situations?
So first of all, the anxiety I've had for years, and I had it long before I even started to work in the fashion industry. Like, I was crippled with anxiety my whole teenage years, and I had a really strong social phobia. So I was pretty much in physical pain every day of my life for that period. So that was already one aspect. And then, of course, entering a working environment where, there's no boundaries at all. So you can not work and then work so much. And when your work starts to impede on how much you sleep and how much you eat and the relationships with people that you have and how you're treated, and it's just a lot. And I feel like at first, when I was young, say like as an assistant in New York, the way that I would deal with that would be kind of avoid it. So I wasn't really conscious that I was toxic. I was just like, I'm not well here, but I wouldn't necessarily think that the situation was bad. I would just think, why can't I work like anyone else? I would kind of blame it on me. But still, I would keep it away as much as possible by never going, for example, full-time with anyone. So I was never full-time for a stylist because I just knew that I couldn't survive this type of pressure on the long term. So I preserved my health by just going like in and out and kind of like keeping that balance like that. But then later on, when I moved back to France, and for the first time I was like a fashion editor in-house at LVMH, and there I had to show up every day at my job, which ended up being toxic also after a while. Then that's when I learned to just leave situations that weren't aligned. I think it's the first time that I ever did that. And then the more you grow that muscle, the more you're like, oh, actually it's okay for me to walk out from any work situation, any relationship, and I just trust that I will be okay on the next side. So that was already a step up. But the good thing from that, kind of like the silver lining, is that anytime I would be in a really bad situation, I would also dream about the alternative. So for example, when I left LVMH and I was like, I'm now realizing how bad fashion is for the environment. I wish we could show alternatives. And I was like, the magazine industry is really problematic. I wish there would be a way to create a magazine where everyone is treated well and stuff. So I would like dream of an alternative. And then that frustration would fuel a project. So in a way, I learned a lot from these toxic situations because they allowed me to dream of an alternative. So that's what I did when I created Substance, my magazine on sustainable fashion, where I was like, I don't want to do only styling, I want to do everything. I really want to give a voice to the people who are working in the shadows or who are doing amazing things. I really want everyone on set to feel comfortable. I don't want there to be any even light abuse like I had witnessed so much on set. Yeah, so that was really the fuel. Of course, it's never perfect, anything that you do, because I learned afterwards that 2 people involved in the projects were being accused of sexual misconduct. So that was startling. I was like, oh, wow, even when you try and do everything well, you never really know. So that was a way for me to kind of heal my relationship with fashion image and fashion media. And I feel like what we're doing now with Feel Seen is also a way to heal this lack of community, this lack of purpose that we see in so many of our peers. So in a way, these situations are bad, but when you learn from them and when you transform them, you can try and offer an alternative, which will hopefully change, even if it's like a tiny portion of the industry. It's always good.
Yeah, and it's quite sad to tell people like we had to go through these toxic situation and work environment to be able now to create the change and to do something that is much more aligned with our purpose and create change in the industry. I feel so many people around us doubting themselves. They don't know how to move to the next step. And it's just creating a space where we can be fully ourselves, be like fully honest. I mean, it's beautiful that you use this experience to work on Substance and to give you the energy, the strength to just continue and to do something that you fully love and you fully back. If you want to tell me a little bit more about like what was the first idea behind Substance. It's such a beautiful magazine. The art direction is just perfect. And I feel also the idea behind is so deep. So can you tell us more about this project?
Yes, so I had this idea, again, at the very end of my job at LVMH, where I had different frustrations. I had, again, like the realization that the fashion industry was terrible for the environment. I always thought that the industry that I had chosen for myself was, frivolous, useless in a way, but I didn't know how bad it was. And it was only starting to be a conversation, especially around COVID and stuff, because that's when I did this project. At the same time, like I turned 30 and I was like, okay, you've been doing your thing for a couple of years now, but what do you really want your time and energy to be dedicated to? And I just couldn't stand the idea of doing something fun but meaningless. And at the time I was like, okay, I'll just quit fashion. And I read this really interesting open-ed in the New York Times where the person was saying, you know, if you really want to make a change, don't quit your industry and go, have cows in the countryside. That's great if that's for you, but the real change will come if every single person at every job and in every industry is inspired by these beliefs and this purpose and change their industry from the inside. So that was my idea. I was like, okay, how can I reconcile being a fashion editor with trying to talk about the environmental impact of the fashion industry? And then I was like, okay, if my job is to shine a light on objects and on people, maybe I'll just pick the projects that are very noble and that maybe don't have the budget to have advertising in big magazines, but that are really cool and that I want to highlight in one way or another. So it was to answer my own frustration of doing only styling when I did want to do art direction and more journalism and all of these side jobs in the fashion magazine industries. And also I wanted that every single product and person that I would highlight in the magazine to be meaningful. And so that's when I landed on the idea of having a magazine that's around raw materials, which is why it's called substance. And to really focus on one material and to explore it in any way possible, because I also feel like fashion is at the root a very deep and profound industry because it is linked to so many others, to the agriculture, to animal welfare, to human rights, to, you know, all of these really interesting things. And it's as if these subjects are completely separated. And so I wanted to reconcile all that and to show just how profound fashion really is and how intertwined it is with the history of humanity, which is certainly the case for cotton, which was the issue that I did. Heavily linked to the Industrial Revolution and to slavery and to all of these issues. So it was a way to really explore what a fiber is. Outside, you know, you look at a shirt and you never think about the farming and the people and potentially the slaves who are working to make this shirt. So it was really a way to get out of my tiny little box in fashion and to kind of like explode and see it from so many new angles. So it was really, really interesting.
Do you ever lose track on your creative projects? Maybe you're a professional artist or creative, but what used to be your passion now feels uninspiring. Or maybe you decided to pursue a safer career path, but you just know you have that artistic side of you that's dying to come out. At Feel Seen, our mission is to get you back in touch with your creativity, your flow, and your purpose. If you are ready to feel seen, we offer one-on-one holistic mentoring sessions designed to reconnect you to your inner artist. You'll find all the information at the link in the show notes. We hope to see you soon.
Yeah, and I feel like also for you, it's really important to make an impact and to start a business that will have a meaning. Nowadays, a lot of people in our industry, they're just feeling so tired because they don't see this meaning of working in the fashion industry, which is like, we need more people like you. As you said, you are in it, so you can change it from inside. There's an ecosystem around it because you also work with commercial clients, you're working with many different freelancers. I'm curious how that's affected your daily life, let's say, and how your routine really changed when you decided to be a business owner.
It's interesting because back when I was still doing only styling and I had an agency and all that, I feel like it's a weird job, but there's a structure around it, right? There's, you know, you have an agent and you're looking for clients and you're looking to get into cool magazines so that cool clients could get you. I mean, there's a way, and it's a very clear way. There's a path. And as soon as you get out of the path, in a way, I felt great because I was doing something that was much more aligned. I was, intertwining different parts of my personality. But at the same time, I was kind of like carving my own path. And so I remember meeting other magazines or clients or recruiters for like big fashion companies and stuff like that. And they would always be like, okay, cool, you can do all that. That's great. But so how, like what box can we put you in? And what was my pride was also a bit confusing for people. So it was a weird thing to navigate. And so after that, I ended up working full-time for another company, diving deeper into textiles and into like the technicality of it and the environmental impact. So I really dove into a much geekier side of the industry, which was really interesting as well. But again, I got frustrated pretty soon because it was too restrictive to be only talking about textiles. And there my creative outlet was writing, a thing that I did more in the magazine. But again, I was like, I miss image as well. So really, I now realize and accept that I'm meant to always be a freelancer. But I feel like it's only now that I'm starting to accept that no 2 days will be the same and that that's great. And I need to honor all of these sides of my creativity. So one day I do styling, the next day I do writing, the next day I have other amazing projects, Feel Seen with you. I have another one that will come out soon where I do object design with a friend. And so it's about accepting who you are and how you want to work, because I feel like when you're a freelancer in a very limiting environment like fashion styling was for me, or when you're in-house, you're like, oh, I wish I was free and I was on my own doing my thing. And then you get there and you're like, am I allowed to work like this? Am I allowed to take a walk in the middle of the day? And it's also another struggle, is that you have to be like, okay, I chose this for myself. And there are downsides to this. There's less security. You have to make your own everything. So just as much as I have learned to embrace the variety of the creative outlets that I want to have in my life, I also need to embrace the rhythm and the methodology of my dreams. And it's really a journey, and I feel like I'm only now landing at a place where I'm at peace with my schedule. And I obviously we talk about it a lot together because we're going through the same thing. But yeah, it's a journey. And also the other side of that was, for the longest time, I was really separating the work that I would put in order to get money, like freelancing, someone orders something, I deliver it. And then all the creative things that I would do outside of that, like painting, like so many other things, I would consider it time off. And now I'm really trying to merge everything and to say, today, I'm giving this much energy to any project, and I'm not doing a separation in my head where I'm like, oh wait, but this space, this doesn't, this maybe one day, but not yet. I'm really trying to reconcile everything and consider it just one work with many facets.
So I feel you're such a great example of being a multidisciplinary artist. I was wondering, so the word artist for many people in our industry, it's a no-brainer. But for some of us, being business owner, doing art practice on the side, did you ever felt this imposter syndrome? Did you ever felt like it was hard for you to believe in your art practice and say, hey, I can make a living with that, or I can really push this through?
Yeah, very much so. Because again, growing up, in the end, I was doing a lot of arts. Just preparing for this interview, I was like, wow, I was doing all of that. I was already into the arts, but it felt like a discipline. It felt like a technique. So in that sense, I didn't feel like an artist. And then when I started fashion school, they would tell us every day from the very first day we arrived there, we're not artists, we work in fashion. That's very different. Maybe this is very French, but there's this big separation, and it's even two separate schools in Paris, right? École des Beaux-Arts, École des Arts Déco. The arts are the things that are quote-unquote useless, like painting, sculpture, installation, all of that performance. And then there are the applied arts, like commercial photography, graphic design, and fashion design. And so it was very clear that if you had this type of education and this type of work, you were a creative person, but you're not an artist. And so in a way, I was always kind of sad about that separation, and I was always like, but I do feel like an artist. But it was a hard thing to reconcile. And it's so absurd as well, because if you're a commercial photographer, but then you have your personal practice, in that context, you're considered as an artist. But it was so heavy that for a while I would be like, yes, I draw, but I'm not an artist, or yes, I write, but I'm not a writer. And, to have all of these really heavy labels felt a lot like an imposter syndrome. But today I want to be like much more free with it, and I wish that everyone was more free with it, because this pressure of being a real artist, to be allowed to draw something or to write something, is what deprives so many people of a creative outlet. And I really do believe that we all need one.
Absolutely. But I feel it's sometimes it's just hard to believe that you can pay your rent with your creative outlet or, your art practice. Do you feel now you achieve this work-life creativity balance? And do you feel that you get paid well for what you put out?
It's still a journey. I feel like I'm the best I've ever been in that department, but I feel like, again, even in fashion photography industry, there's a real separation between the things that you do to express yourself, say personal projects or for the magazines, that are creative but free. Yeah. And then there are the things that you do to pay the rent, which are commercial jobs, which are mostly not so creative. So there's this real idea around real creativity being for free, and then your craft being what people pay you for. And so that's really something that I'm trying to break as a cycle. And I feel like AI is also going to teach us that, because obviously like a lot of people are really threatened. But at the end of the day, for the past few years, I was always like, well, if I really have to, I can always go back to doing like e-commerce styling, or to write copy that's really like simple and straightforward, or to use my voice to do, because I do that also sometimes, to do voiceover or things like that. But now that machines can do all of these things, we're actually learning that our real value is in our creativity, it is in our sensitivity. And so it's really forcing us to recognize that it is actually this creative and artistic side of us that's irreplaceable and that actually has value.
Do you prioritize any of your creative outlet? Because you're an amazing painter, illustrator, you're doing music, you like to write and to sing. You have so many interests and so many passions. Do you have one art practice that you prioritize right now? And can you tell us why it's really important for you to develop it?
I don't prioritize any. What I do want to try is for every week to hold a space for each and every one of them. But I don't necessarily plan it ahead, because I feel like it's kind of a calling, and it's a different vibe. Like, you need like energy to sing, even if you're just doing like a voice workout. Whereas when I write, I'm really just like either about to fall asleep or just waking up. So it's really very different moments of the day. And so the thing that I do now is to try, when I do get this calling, to just do it. And that's already very new. Even if I'm in the middle of something else, of say like a paying job for a client, is to just accept and be like, you know what, I did like 2 good hours focused on this project. I can take an hour to do something that's purely artistic. And then again, because I'm a freelancer, because I'm doing my own thing, maybe at 8 tonight I want to work again. So it's about accepting that fluidity. But definitely what I try and do is to hold space for ideas to arrive, because if you just plan your whole week and you see people all the time, and even in your time off, like you watch a movie before you go to sleep, and then you listen to a podcast to fall asleep, and then you take a walk but you listen to something else, there's just too much noise. And so what I really try and do is to preserve empty spaces during the week, because that's where everything stems from. Be it my well-being, because again, like I cured my anxiety, but I know that there's a terrain, and if I'm not careful, it will come back. And also for new ideas and creativity to pop in.
I feel for you everything is intertwined, so you don't have like a really set structure. So We all know how hard it is to work by yourself, especially if you're a freelancer, a creative, an artist. How do you manage the lifestyle of working by yourself? And do you feel the need often to have this sounding board, second opinion and perspective on your artwork?
So I'm only now learning what I really need on the daily to be grounded. And that for me, it starts with good sleep. I mean, it's basic, but if you don't have that, I can't go anywhere. So I try and prioritize whatever the time that I go to bed. I always sleep for 8 hours and 15 minutes. That's how I set my alarm. So that's already like a great base. And then I start every day with a guided meditation on an app. And so whatever I'm feeling when I wake up, if I'm feeling a little anxious or a little reluctant to do something that I need to do during the day, or a little sad, I wake up and I identify what my struggle might be, and straight away I address it. And then like I have a full-on breakfast. Then I take a walk outside to kind of have light in my face, see. I live next to the water, so just to look at the ducks and then go into the garden and be in the trees and just see old people and little kids, and just to ground more in a natural rhythm and not stay, like roll out of bed, be online. And I feel like if you wake up, social media, work on your computer, it really creates a lot of anxiety, because you feel like this rhythm is imperative. But when you go outside and you see the rhythm at which animals and kids live, you're like, okay, I'm allowed the same space and the same lifestyle. So that's why I do it every day. And then in terms of like prioritizing an art practice and having second opinion and stuff, I'm fortunate, or I've created like the environment where most of the weeks I have painting classes and I have singing classes. And so it's really amazing to be in contact on the regular with people whose job it is to create beauty and to perfect their crafts every day, be it your singing voice or how you use your brushes to represent things. And these people are really, again, validating this impulse, because it's kind of hard as an adult to be like, yes, I'm going to take singing lessons. People are either like, do you want to become a full-time professional, or are you already like a retired person who just like has hobbies? But I feel like it's so important. And now I really prioritize this. And, like on the days where I have my painting classes, I don't book any meetings. I don't work on any other things. I'm like, this is what I need. And it brings me so much. And even sometimes things that, especially my singing teacher says, it will affect my life in so many other ways, because he's teaching me how to interact with clients, how to deal with personal issues. It feels like an artistic outlet and a workout and being with a comedy actor and being with a coach. It's so holistic. And I feel like, again, everyone should have that kind of creative practice, because it's so much more important and deep than just, learning how to sing a song.
I see you're really dedicated with your mindfulness practice as well, which is amazing, because you created really great habit around your daily routine. I would like to understand, when you create, when you're in your flow, when you have a good day full of inspiration, that's a reaction in your body and brain when you feel you're doing something that you're really proud of?
So it's funny, because last time when I interviewed you, you said, or I noticed or observed, that you're kind of like a hunter. You need to go out, see things, and then you see beauty and you capture it. And for me, it feels like kind of the opposite, where, of course, like I go and see, I read books and see movies and see exhibitions, and I'm really inspired and moved by other people's work. But it feels like every idea that I have comes from emptiness and stillness and just being alone with myself. So I'd say that I'm really, like, again, that is partly why I'm so into mindfulness. Well, because of like the mental health, of course, advantages, but also because that's where everything starts. And so it's in that aloneness, in that quietness, that I can really have ideas. And so when these ideas arrive, whether they come, when I'm walking or taking a shower, or I'm in between being awake and being asleep, or even sometimes in a dream I'll see something and I'm like, wow, this is so beautiful, I have to wake up, and I wake up and I draw it, So it feels more like fishing, I have this kind of shadow of an intuition and I need to have it to translate it back up. So it feels like being really still and silent, but also very alert. And that's also how my singing teacher talks about singing. He's like, you need to be incredibly relaxed, but also very, very strong. It's like being a boxer, you need to be ready for everything, super strong, but also very, very relaxed. So I don't know, maybe there's a link there. So that's to get the ideas. But when you actually, after that, needs to give them a body and to create them, usually between the idea and the realization, I tend to have a little apprehension because I have so many more ideas than the thing that I actually put out. So usually I'd be a little scared and I'd be like, oh, but it's so good in my head. Once I give it a real body, whereas it's a song or an image or whatever, I'm like, is it going to be less good than the thing I have in my mind? And therefore it becomes a birthing and kind of a death at the same time. But when I surpass that and I'm like, no, come on, let's just do it. Let's just put your ass on that chair and try and do something. Then pretty quickly you get in that flow and that sense of like, you're so consumed by what you are doing. You have no idea who you are, where you are, what time is it, like how long has it been? And you're just like fully immersed in that experience. And that feels so amazing that I really do believe that, I could do that for the rest of my life and I'd be happy. Every time that I paint, I'm like, this is so amazing. I could do that forever, even if no painting was being created. Just the feeling of it, feels so good. Then when you do get a painting that you like out of it, it's kind of like the cherry on the cake. But just the experience in and of itself is amazing.
I see that you have a lot of idea from your subconscious in your dreams or when you walk. Is there any artist or art movement that you are really inspired by?
I'd say that for me, it would be the artists that live in a way that their art is their entire life. These are really my examples because it's ultimately what I aspire to. So when you think of how Georgia O'Keeffe designed her home, and she would design and make her clothes and her jewelry, and even the rocks and the bones that would be in her house, like she picked them and curated them, and everything around her was so beautiful, and she just spent her days in nature painting. Like when you think about that kind of lifestyle, you're like, that's what I want. So any person who's dedicated like that 1000% to their art. For example, I was just seeing also Hockney's exhibition last week, whose work I adore, and it's so inspiring to see a person, I think he's in his 80s now, and he's still using every new medium. He does obviously acrylic, oil, watercolor, but also starting to use iPads and 3D, and just to think that an entire lifetime could be dedicated to expressing oneself through every form, and to do that until your last breath. David Lynch coined the term the art life. That's exactly how he lived. It was meditation and creation in every form, whether it was cinema, but also music, also painting. He would just wake up, meditate, create, day in, day out until his last day. And that's really the people who inspire me the most, because there's something so, again, removed from any consideration of work. Is just like a purpose. They do their thing. Some of it sells, some of it doesn't, but they just do it anyway, and that's what they were there for. So yeah, these are my North Stars.
And what would you say your purpose is right now?
Right now, I'd say, hopefully this will be the case for my entire life, but I feel like I've had passions, one for creation, expression, art, and beauty, and the other one for psychology, spirituality, growth, transformation, and all that. And these were always kind of separate. And for the past year or so, I was always like, how could I reconcile the two, And a while back, you introduced me to people like Rick Rubin or Julia Cameron, who really, how famous they are for intertwining these two topics and being like, creating art is a spiritual practice. Your ideas don't come from you. You're kind of like a vessel to creation. And that was really incredible for me to see these two topics being mixed and to be like, okay, there's a purpose to these two things being intertwined, and for me to love both. And then when you created Philcine a couple months ago, I was like, my God, she cracked the code. Like, this is it. Holistic creative mentoring. That's genius. I wish that was my job, you know? And then you were like, do you want to join me? And I was like, yes. So yeah, it's amazing because I feel like my two passions, your two passions, are now taking a shape and becoming this incredible projects that we get to work on together. And yeah, to be able to have such an aligned project with such an aligned partner is dreamy. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
And how do you feel Philcine will contribute to this creative industry that is going through so much change right now?
I really hope it brings support to people who are navigating these issues that we mentioned throughout this interview, be it being lonely in your practice, needed to be seen for what you have to offer creatively, navigating this changing industry. Obviously, again, how the rise of AI is kind of changing all of our jobs. I mean, we're in the midst of it, and it's just the beginning, and it's going to be so huge. And I don't believe that it means that no creative will exist or make a living anymore. I just think that we're all going to reinvent our jobs. And so even by us creating this project, it's very new. It's unheard of to do this type of venture. And I do believe that every person, every creative, every job can be reinvented and to kind of create their own rules and create their own thing and for it to be viable. But we all have to be very honest with what we have to offer, to have the imagination to try and draw a different future. And I do believe that having that caring community that we're going to create will hopefully be a support for all of these people navigating through that, and hopefully creating a lifestyle that's more aligned on the other side.
And I'm really excited to have you as a mentor on the platform. And I'm sure a lot of people will relate to your story and the beauty that you're creating. So just to conclude the interview, I would like to know what's your idea of beauty?
I feel like it's more broad and wide and, again, deep than what my definition would have been 10 years ago. But I do feel that now beauty is not only man-made. Like, I don't think that, you have to have an artwork in a frame for it to be beautiful. You don't need to buy something to experience beauty. I feel like it's everywhere. Again, obviously in nature, in other human beings. So I feel like it's more of a way of looking at life where you see beauty everywhere. You're inspired by everything. And it's really important to cherish that, because when you're experiencing beauty, when you're in awe, it's kind of like time stops and there's no room for you to be anxious, to be obsessing over the past, over the future. You're kind of like in the moment, in your sensations. And that's when you're conscious and that's when you feel the most alive. So again, I feel like beauty is much more than aesthetics. It's really intertwined with being conscious and to live a purposeful life.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so grateful for you and so happy to share this new venture with my best friend.
Me too.
Thank you.
That's it for today's episode. We thank our guests for their trust, and we thank you for being a part of our community. If you like this episode and want to support our work, consider ranking our podcast on Apple or Spotify. And if you know someone who could benefit from this conversation, please share our work with them to help them spread the dream of a conscious, creative community. Talk soon.